If you were ever a kid, then odds are you know what bubblegum tastes like. Its flavor has been used in everything from jelly beans to ice cream to lip balm. But most of us would still be hard-pressed to explain what that flavor is. And that's why today we're bursting the bubblegum on what exactly bubblegum is supposed to taste like. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History Food channel. After that, please leave a comment and let us know what other strange flavors you would like to hear about. Okay, time to chew on the taste of bubblegum. The history of bubblegum starts with the history of chewing gum. And the history of chewing gum starts in the Neolithic Age, which, for the record, lasted from 10,000 to 2000 BCE. Historically speaking, that means gum had already been around for 7,000 years or so when construction was started on Stonehenge, which explains why so much of it was left stuck underneath those rocks by chew-happy druids. Gum did not have one specific inventor. It arose independently across many different cultures, usually being made from something local to the respective region. Archaeologists in Finland, for example, have found a 5,000-year-old piece of gum made from birch bark tar, but none of the cowards chewed it. The Mayans and Aztecs used chicle, a natural tree gum, and the ancient Greeks chewed on resin from mastic trees. Like people today, the ancients chewed gum to clean their teeth, freshen their breath, or just because they liked the taste. But what they did not do was use their gum to blow bubbles. Have you ever tried blowing a bubble with chewing gum? It's like firing at a spittoon. That's because bubblegum wasn't invented until 1928. Bubblegum is basically just softer chewing gum with a consistency more conducive to blowing bubbles. But unlike chewing gum, bubblegum did have one specific inventor. His name was Walter Deamer, and in 1928 he worked at the Fleer Chewing Gum Company. The fact he invented bubblegum would probably lead you to assume he was some sort of scientist, but Deamer was actually an accountant. Nonetheless, in his spare time, he liked to experiment with the factory's product line. Maybe he was a scientist. 22 years earlier, the owner of the company, Frank Fleer, had attempted to create a marketable bubblegum, but the product, which he called Blibber Blubber, somehow sucked, despite having that name. It was sticky and brittle, and you needed to aggressively scrub your skin with a solvent to get it off. So Blibber Blubber never made it to market. And that would have been the end of it, except Blibber Blubber happened to be one of the products Deamer used in his experiments. He decided to add some latex to the recipe. And the moment he did, bubblegum was born. Deamer's creation was far less sticky than chewing gum, and it stretched easily, making it ideal for blowing bubbles. It was originally an unappetizing gray color, but Deamer fixed that by adding some pink dye to the mix, because it was the only color the factory had. And that's the reason bubblegum is associated with the color pink to this day. Sensing he was onto something, Deamer tested his product at local candy stores and discovered that kids loved bubblegum. It sold out fast, which caught the attention of Fleer, who decided to mass market the stuff under the name Double Bubble. To help convince retailers to stock it, Deamer had to teach the company's sales force how to blow bubbles. No, really. And to help capture the attention of children, the gum was packaged with a color comic strip called Fleer Funnies, which followed the adventures of two kids named Dub and Bub. Double Bubble became the first mass-marketed bubblegum in history, and the company sold $1.5 million worth of it in the first year alone. For perspective, that's the equivalent of roughly $28 million today. That success meant Double Bubble would soon face competition from imitator brands like Rainbow and Super Bubble. But Double Bubble would remain the top seller until sometime after World War II, when it was surpassed by another brand that also liked to package its gum with comic strips, Bazooka. Manufactured by the Topps Company of New York, Bazooka made an icon out of its mascot, Bazooka Joe, who would go on to star in over 1,500 comic strips for them. Incidentally, if you're into baseball, the name Fleer is probably ringing a bell for you right now. Starting in 1923, Fleer began printing baseball cards, which would be packaged with sticks of their gum. The original idea was to promote sales of the gum, but those cards eventually became so successful that the company stopped making gum altogether in 1995 and became a trading card company. The practice of packaging bubblegum with comic strips or trading cards remained both popular and profitable for decades. But starting in the mid-1970s, manufacturers began to slowly drop the bells and whistles and return to focus on the gum itself. Or at least they tried to. It really began in 1975, when Lifesavers Incorporated introduced Bubblegum. The new brand had a super soft consistency that made it extra good for blowing bubbles, and it tested well with both kids and adults. When the product went national, it was so popular the company had trouble keeping up with demand. But then something totally unpredictable happened. A bizarre urban legend began to spread that Bubblegum was made with spider eggs, or in some tellings, spider webs. These tales were often embellished with icky details about kids waking up with spider webs in their mouths, or spiders crawling out of their nose. And since the internet didn't exist yet for quick and easy fact-checking, the horror stories were widely believed. In fact, a study performed by Lifesavers showed that 40 to 50% of the gum-buying public had heard this spider egg story, and it was starting to affect sales. The problem was so pervasive that in 1977, the company had to take out a full page in the New York Times and around 30 other publications to issue a statement specifically denying it. Luckily for them, that statement was effective and sales rebounded. And that's when other brands started popping up. Bubblicious, for example, debuted in 1977. And Hubba Bubba showed up 2 years after that in 1979. Big League Chew, a shredded bubblegum designed to mimic the chewing tobacco that was once a favorite of Major League Baseball players, was released in 1980. And Bubbled Tape, which combines the fun of blowing bubbles with the fun of having a roll of tape, was a comparatively late starter that didn't show up until 1988. As for Bubblegum, it came back just fine, and as of 2020, it was the most popular brand of bubblegum in the US, and the 13th most popular brand of gum overall. The most popular chewing gum was Icebreaker's Ice Cubes. You definitely can't blow bubbles with those. As those statistics make clear, bubblegum is far less popular than chewing gum. In fact, bubblegum accounts for a mere 15% of global gum sales, and all of the rest is just regular old chewing gum. That's because adults heavily favor chewing gum over bubblegum. That being said, some adults do love bubblegum. The record for the largest bubble ever blown, for example, belongs to Susan Montgomery Williams, who was in her mid-30s when she blew her record-breaking bubble, which was 23 inches in diameter. Williams was also highly proficient at loudly popping her gum. In fact, her cracks were so loud, she was arrested for disturbing the crowd during a Smokey Robinson concert. Then, when she went to court to deal with the matter, she popped her gum so loudly in the hallway, bailiffs thought someone was firing a gun, and she was arrested again. Williams is the rare adult who got into trouble for chewing gum and blowing bubbles. But it happens to school kids all the time. In fact, a survey conducted by the National Center for Education Statistics in 2022 found that 92% of public schools had completely banned all forms of chewing gum. Public schools started banning gum all the way back in the 1920s, and by the 1970s, such bans were practically ubiquitous. For starters, gum is a pain to clean off floors and from the bottoms of desks and tables, and Stonehenges, as we mentioned earlier. And of course, the sounds of nonstop chewing and popping can be distracting in the classroom. Gum also poses a unique choking hazard, and schools want to minimize the chances of a student asphyxiating, or pretending to, just as a pop quiz hits their desk. All that notwithstanding, studies have repeatedly shown that the act of chewing gum can make a person more alert, sharpen their concentration, and improve their cognitive functioning. That means chewing gum might actually make you a better student. Also, blowing bubbles is fun. Nonetheless, gum bans remain popular, and not just in schools. In 1992, for example, the entire country of Singapore banned all forms of chewing gum to protect their national infrastructure and promote public cleanliness. So if you hate the sound of people chewing gum, you might want to consider living there. Okay, so what exactly is bubblegum supposed to taste like? Believe it or not, the short answer is fruit. While every company makes their own version of it, and they're all slightly different, bubblegum flavor is a combination of various fruit flavors and a good deal of sweetener. Typical mixtures include cherry, banana, and strawberry, but it's common to find elements like orange, lemon, kiwi, pineapple, mango, blueberry, and raspberry in there as well. This complex mixture of competing flavors doesn't occur naturally, and that's partially what makes it so hard for most people to articulate what bubblegum tastes like. Go ahead, try it without saying the word gum. As far as anyone could tell, the flavor itself was created by a scientist and businessman named Thomas Adams. Adams is widely credited as being the man who invented the very idea of flavored chewing gum. And he's also probably the inventor of the gumball machine, which made its first appearance in 1907. For what it's worth, Adams himself called the flavor he created Tutti Frutti, which is Italian for all fruits, and Little Richard for an absolute banger. Believe it or not, that Tutti Frutti flavor can be achieved with natural ingredients. If you're interested in giving it a shot, savvy culinary types have figured out a number of mixtures that get the job done, including one composed of pineapple, banana, cinnamon, wintergreen, and cloves. That being said, corporate gum manufacturers aren't grinding up fruit to put in your pouch of Big League Chew. The flavors in chewing gums are achieved using chemical simulations called esters. Esters give off a fruity aroma, and those aromas play a huge role in how we perceive taste. They're used to flavor dozens of different kinds of foods and beverages, as well as products like soaps and perfumes. Esters commonly found in bubblegum flavor include sciencey-sounding things like ethyl butyrate, benzyl acetate, methyl salicylate, amyl acetate, and cinnamic aldehyde. Of course, none of those sound terribly appetizing, which is probably why they decided to just call the flavor bubblegum. Maybe we should have stuck with Tutti Frutti. So what do you think? How would you describe the flavor of bubblegum? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other weird history food videos.